He was once the most dominant force in basketball, a smiling superstar destined to rule the league. But behind the charisma and the highlight reels was a trail of controversies that never stopped following him. And for Dwight Howard, those shadows told a story far darker than anyone imagined. Welcome to Off-Court Truths, where we uncover the hidden stories, buried tensions, and unfiltered realities the NBA never expects to surface. Dwight Howard entered the NBA as a phenomenon, an 18-year-old prodigy drafted first overall in 2004 with the weight of a franchise on his shoulders. With his rare blend of size, athleticism, and charisma, he quickly became the face of the Orlando Magic and one of the league's most magnetic personalities. Fans adored his humor, kids mimicked his dunks, analysts projected him as the next dominant center, a superstar built to carry the NBA into a new era. And for a while, he delivered. Howard transformed Orlando into a powerhouse, winning 3 Defensive Player of the Year awards and leading the Magic to the 2009 NBA Finals. His presence filled arenas, his smile sold jerseys, and his athleticism reshaped expectations for modern big men. To the outside world, Dwight was a force of joy and entertainment, someone who played with the passion and freedom fans wish they had. But beneath the light-hearted exterior was a more complicated reality. Howard longed to be loved, yet struggled with the burdens of leadership. His playful demeanor often collided with the seriousness expected from a franchise cornerstone. Teammates misread him, coaches clashed with him, and slowly the fractures behind the scenes began to surface, setting the stage for a series of controversies that would follow him for years. So what happened that caused everything to fall apart for Dwight Howard? The first crack in Dwight Howard's polished image appeared during his final years in Orlando, when tensions between Howard and the organization quietly escalated into a public storm. What began as minor disagreements about roster decisions and coaching philosophies soon evolved into something far more volatile. Howard, eager to be taken seriously as a superstar with real influence, increasingly voiced frustrations behind closed doors. But those frustrations didn't stay private for long. The breaking point came in 2012 when head coach Stan Van Gundy shocked reporters by stating that management had informed him Dwight wanted him fired. Moments later, Howard unexpectedly walked into the same press scrum, placing a hand on Van Gundy's shoulder, smiling, completely unaware of what had just been said. The awkwardness of that moment spread across the league instantly. Clips went viral. Commentators questioned Howard's integrity. Fans began to wonder who Dwight really was beneath the charm. The NBA world reacted quickly. Some defended him, arguing the organization mishandled the situation. Others labeled him indecisive, power-hungry, or unwilling to accept responsibility. The Magic franchise spiraled under the pressure, and Howard's reputation, once untouchable, began to fracture. What should have been a simple internal conflict became the first major controversy that defined the darker side of Dwight Howard's career. The controversy in Orlando didn't erupt overnight. It unfolded in stages, each one revealing deeper cracks in Dwight Howard's relationship with the franchise, the media, and ultimately the league itself. To understand how his public image shifted so drastically, from beloved superstar to one of the NBA's most polarizing figures, we have to walk through the timeline of events that reshaped his entire career. The beginning seemed harmless enough. In the late 2000s, Howard was the centerpiece of Orlando's championship hopes. His dominance on defense, his explosiveness around the rim, and his cheerful personality made him the perfect star for a smaller market team trying to rise into national relevance. Yet behind the scenes, Howard felt the team wasn't doing enough to support his ambitions. He wanted more talent, more respect, and more say in how the franchise was run. It wasn't unusual. Many superstars seek influence. But for Dwight, this desire collided with his reputation as someone who didn't take things seriously enough. As the seasons went on, internal conflicts grew. Howard became increasingly frustrated with the Magic's direction, convinced that the roster around him wasn't strong enough to win a championship. Meanwhile, management quietly questioned his leadership. Some teammates felt his playful persona made it difficult to treat him as the franchise's authoritative voice. It was a dangerous mismatch. Howard wanted a bigger role in decision-making, while the organization wanted him to grow into a more mature, disciplined leader. Then came the moment that changed everything, the Van Gundy press conference. When Stan publicly said Dwight wanted him fired, it shattered the illusion that Howard's relationship with Orlando was stable. Dwight's uncomfortable entrance into that interview room became a defining viral moment, one that the media replayed endlessly. Analysts debated whether Dwight had lied, whether he had betrayed his coach, whether the front office had turned him into a scapegoat. For the first time, Howard wasn't seen as a joyful star. He was seen as a problem. From there, the situation deteriorated rapidly. Howard submitted a trade request, then rescinded it, then reportedly demanded it again. The indecision fueled ridicule across sports media. Commentators called the saga Dwightmare, a chaotic cycle of mixed messages that exhausted fans and fractured the Magic locker room. Orlando was no longer building around a superstar. It was trying to escape the consequences of a relationship that had become toxic on both sides. Eventually, the Magic granted his wish, trading Howard to the Los Angeles Lakers in one of the most anticipated moves of the decade. On paper, the Lakers had assembled a super team: Kobe Bryant, Steve Nash, Paul Gasol, and Dwight Howard. Expectations skyrocketed. Many believed the Lakers were destined for a championship. But inside the locker room, tension simmered. Howard arrived in Los Angeles recovering from back surgery, which limited his mobility and slowed his dominance. Kobe Bryant, known for his demanding leadership style, pushed Howard relentlessly, challenging his toughness, focus, and commitment. Howard, who always thrived in positive environments, struggled under Kobe's intensity. He wanted encouragement. Kobe offered blunt honesty. Their personalities clashed from day one. The media had a field day with the conflict. Reports leaked about disagreements in practice and a growing divide between the team's stars. Commentators criticized Howard's unwillingness to accept criticism, while others argued Kobe's approach was too harsh for a player recovering physically and emotionally. Still, the damage was done. The Lakers' super team stumbled, chemistry never formed, and the season ended in disappointment. After just 1 year, Dwight left the Lakers, becoming the first superstar to walk away from Kobe Bryant's franchise. The move to Houston was supposed to be a fresh start. Howard teamed up with James Harden, forming what analysts called the NBA's next great duo. But once again, drama found him. Reports from inside the Rockets organization described tension between Howard and Harden, disagreements over offensive roles, and issues with consistent effort on defense and in the pick and roll. Coaches became frustrated. Teammates whispered about their displeasure. Fans questioned whether Howard still had the desire to win at the highest level. The media narrative turned harsher. Dwight went from being a misunderstood star to a player labeled difficult, immature, or uncoachable. Fair or not, the storyline stuck. His window as a superstar began to close, and as injuries mounted, teams grew more reluctant to build around him. What followed was a nomadic stretch: Atlanta, Charlotte, Washington. Each stop shorter and more scrutinized than the last. Howard still produced respectable numbers, but the drama surrounding him overshadowed everything else. Then came the most controversial chapter of his personal life: public accusations involving his private relationships and allegations that circulated widely on social media. Howard denied wrongdoing, and several claims never led to charges or legal action, but the headlines were enough to ignite fierce debate online. The NBA did not intervene, as the matters were positioned as personal disputes, but public perception took another hit. For a player already carrying years of narrative baggage, the new allegations deepened the shadows around his legacy. As the controversy escalated, Howard found himself unofficially pushed to the margins of the league. Teams hesitated to sign him. Commentators dismissed him as a locker room risk. Even as Howard continued working on his body and skills, he struggled to find a franchise willing to give him a real opportunity. It was a stunning fall for someone who once stood at the top of the NBA's hierarchy. Yet amid the chaos, a moment of clarity arrived. In 2019, Dwight agreed to return to the Los Angeles Lakers, this time on a non-guaranteed contract. No demands, no expectations, just a chance to rebuild his reputation. Howard embraced a humble role, focusing on defense, rebounding, and energy. He no longer tried to be the face of a franchise. He just wanted to contribute, and it worked. Howard became a vital part of the Lakers' 2020 championship run. His physicality disrupted opponents. His energy lifted teammates. His acceptance of a reduced role showed a level of maturity many believed he lacked. For the first time in years, the narrative around Dwight shifted, not to admiration, but to respect for his resilience. Still, even after winning a championship, the controversies never fully left him. His name remained tied to every headline, every rumor, every debate about wasted potential or misunderstood greatness. Dwight Howard's story had become more than basketball. It had become a saga about reputation, pressure, personality, and the difficulty of escaping a shadow once it takes shape. To understand Dwight Howard's controversies, you have to look beyond the headlines and into the psyche of a man shaped by expectation, contradiction, and an overwhelming desire to be loved. From the moment he arrived in the NBA, Howard stood out not only for his physical gifts, but for his infectious personality. He smiled through pressure, joked through tension, and carried himself with a youthful energy that endeared him to fans. But that same lightheartedness often clashed with the realities of being a franchise cornerstone in a league that demands seriousness, consistency, and emotional toughness. Growing up in a deeply religious household, Howard learned to value positivity and public image. He wanted to inspire, not divide. He wanted teammates to enjoy the game, not drown in intensity. But as he ascended to superstardom, the gap between who he was and who the league expected him to be widened. The NBA didn't just want talent from him, it wanted leadership. It wanted gravity. It wanted a face that could withstand scrutiny. And Howard, still carrying the mindset of a young man who found joy in the game above all else, struggled to align his personality with the responsibilities thrust upon him. At his core, Howard wrestled with conflicting identities: the entertainer who sought approval, the competitor who desired validation, and the leader he wasn't yet ready to become. When criticized, he didn't respond with anger. He responded with discomfort, confusion, and withdrawal. This made him an easy target for narratives claiming he lacked seriousness or maturity. The more he tried to hold on to the version of himself that felt authentic, the more the world pushed him into a mold that felt unnatural. The smile remained, but beneath it was a man battling insecurity, public pressure, and the fear that no matter what he did, it would never be enough. Bancho Moon Toi Via Tiep Pan 7, the climax, turning point Kong. The defining moment of Dwight Howard's downfall came not during a game, but in a heated, suffocating stretch of tension inside the Los Angeles Lakers locker room during the 2012-2013 season. Howard, still recovering from back surgery and struggling to regain his dominance, found himself under the relentless eye of Kobe Bryant, one of the most demanding leaders in sports history. What Kobe valued above all was toughness, accountability, and an unbreakable will to win. What Dwight brought in Kobe's eyes was talent without an edge. The breaking point arrived during a now infamous confrontation between the two. Teammates later described practices where Kobe challenged Dwight openly, questioning his pain tolerance, his seriousness, his commitment. Howard, already navigating physical limitations and emotional pressure, pushed back, insisting he was doing everything he could. But Kobe, hardened by years of carrying the Lakers, refused to soften his tone. At one explosive moment, their disagreement escalated into a verbal clash so intense that staff had to step between them. That scene became the symbolic collapse of a partnership that was meant to revive a dynasty. For Dwight, it was more than a disagreement. It was a shattering realization. In that room, under fluorescent lights and the weight of a franchise's expectations, he saw the narrative turning against him in real time. He wasn't the hero. He wasn't the superstar savior. He was the scapegoat, the outsider, the man who didn't fit the culture he had been brought in to elevate. That moment, raw, unfiltered, and deeply personal, marked the emotional climax of Dwight Howard's career. It was here, not on the court, that everything began to crumble. The fallout from Dwight Howard's clashes, first in Orlando, then in Los Angeles, and later in Houston, spread through his career like a slow-moving collapse. Once viewed as a franchise cornerstone, Howard became increasingly seen as a risky investment, a player whose talent was unquestioned, but whose presence brought uncertainty. Teams began to approach him with caution. Media narratives hardened. The label of difficult teammate followed him from city to city, overshadowing his accomplishments and painting him as the center of locker room turmoil, even when evidence was mixed or circumstantial. Professionally, the consequences were swift and severe. Howard transitioned from perennial All-NBA star to a journeyman almost overnight. Orlando, Los Angeles, Houston, Atlanta, Charlotte, Washington, each stop felt shorter, each opportunity thinner, each relationship more fragile. His value on the open market plummeted, and for the first time in his career, teams were not competing for his services, they were hesitating. Public perception took an even deeper hit. Fans who once celebrated his playful personality now interpreted it as immaturity. Analysts criticized his inconsistent effort, his sensitivity to criticism, and his inability to adapt as the league evolved. And when personal allegations unrelated to basketball surfaced, claims he denied but that spread rapidly across social media, the scrutiny intensified. Whether fair or unfair, these stories fused with his career struggles, creating an image of a star perpetually surrounded by tension. Endorsements faded, opportunities shrank. Discussions about his legacy shifted from his dominance to his drama. For a player once projected to rival the great centers of history, the consequences were not just professional, they were reputational. Dwight Howard wasn't merely falling out of the spotlight, he was being pushed out of the narrative entirely. For years, Dwight Howard's career drifted in a haze of disappointment and skepticism. Once a dominant force, he had become a cautionary tale, a former superstar struggling to find a place in a league that had evolved without him. But just as the narrative seemed sealed, something unexpected happened. His redemption arc began not with a triumphant announcement, but with a quiet, humbling agreement, a non-guaranteed contract with the Los Angeles Lakers in 2019. It was a deal that carried no promises, no starting spot, no guaranteed minutes, nothing to protect him if he failed. And for the first time in his career, Dwight accepted all of it. Gone was the superstar aura. Gone were the expectations of being the guy. He embraced a new role built on defense, rebounding, and physicality, things he once relied on, but now approached with renewed purpose and humility. Behind the scenes, teammates noticed the shift immediately. Howard arrived early, stayed late, and spoke less. Instead of trying to entertain the room, he focused on earning trust. Instead of asking for touches, he asked how he could help. The smile remained, but it carried a different weight, less playful, more grounded. The man who had spent years wrestling with criticism now let his actions speak louder than his personality. On the court, the transformation was undeniable. Howard became a disruptive defensive presence, a relentless rebounder, and a stabilizing force in the Lakers' second unit. His physical battles with big men in the playoffs, particularly during the Western Conference Finals, reignited reminders of the force he once was. Fans who had written him off suddenly cheered his name again. Analysts who once questioned his maturity now praised his discipline and impact. Then came the culmination, the 2020 NBA championship. Dwight Howard, once pushed out of the league's spotlight, was now a champion, something that had eluded him even in his prime. The ring didn't erase the controversies, nor did it rewrite the earlier chapters of his story, but it reframed them. His journey was no longer just about the fall. It was about resilience, reinvention, and a willingness to confront the version of himself that the world had grown tired of. It was not a perfect comeback. It was not a complete restoration, but it was real, earned, and deeply human. A reminder that even those chased by controversy can still find light on the other side of their longest shadows. Dwight Howard's story reveals a truth often forgotten in the world of professional sports. Talent can elevate an athlete to greatness, but character, perception, and emotional resilience determine how long that greatness lasts. His rise showed us the power of physical dominance and youthful charisma. His fall exposed the weight of expectation, the fragility of reputation, and the way unresolved conflicts can snowball into defining narratives. Yet his comeback, quiet, humble, and hard-earned, reminded us that redemption is never out of reach for those willing to confront their flaws and rebuild from the inside out. Howard's journey teaches us that being a superstar is not just about what happens under the bright lights, but how one survives the darkness behind them. And sometimes the most meaningful victories come long after the spotlight has faded. Thank you for watching this deep dive into Dwight Howard's complex journey. Comment below which NBA legend or controversial figure you want us to uncover next.